Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. iLLeY has returned to social media for the first time in some time to say the search and destroy practice and streams are coming back in business very soon. Does this indicate a return to the CDL in the near future? Will he have to wait until next season? But also a highly controversial TLS, as per usual, coming out off the flank. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, I wanted to mention I thought this was really cool again. I believe that OpTic did this a while ago for NASCAR, a couple of months ago now, where they sponsored a car, and we can see here yesterday this was the number 7 OpTic car. I thought it was really cool stuff actually, and I didn't watch the NASCAR race yesterday. I was going to tune in a bit, but I was out. It had because Kimi Räikkönen and Jenson Button were racing in it, so I thought it was probably worth a watch. I think Kimi had some issues, like he had some damage during the race or something. I think in the end they finished right next to each other actually, the OpTic car and Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi Räikkönen, F1 legend and 2007 world champion, and yeah, P11 to end the day it was. So really cool. I mean, the livery looks fantastic. It's got to be said on this OpTic car. So it's cool stuff that they do this, and I think they'll probably do this every so often now as well. I just thought it was a nice touch to see that OpTic, after investing and doing this the first time round, felt like it was worthwhile to run it back and do it again. So cool stuff, and yeah, I don't watch too much NASCAR, but I think when this is happening, I don't know what the crossover is either between, like, you know, OpTic fans and NASCAR fans in terms of like age demographics and stuff, but it seems to be working for them. So hopefully, you know, long may it continue in that sense as well, and maybe others will come up with similar ideas in the future also. Wanted to touch on this again because we talked about Scump a couple of days ago now, potentially reuniting with methods to play in some sort of, you know, Challengers Cup, right? They ended up not playing in it. There were questions as to whether Scump was concerned that his chat would just be roasting him, right, if he was to play in it and they were to lose and not go particularly well. And there's been some discussions about Scump not wanting to tarnish his legacy, let's say, by playing in something like this. Like, fundamentally, he's taken a break from competition. Okay, he's retired, right? But he's going to take a break from playing things of a competitive nature, and the idea to come back as kind of like an old school retired OpTic Nation, old men of OpTic type thing, and play in a Challengers Cup sounds good for the fans. The viewership would pop off. Like, imagine, you know, the viewership for Scump playing a Challengers Cup would do better than the actual CDL matches probably. But Scump kind of says here, look, he doesn't want to just hop back into competition for no good reason, because if he does, then people are going to look at his kind of Call of Duty career. I mean, for example, on Scump's COD Gamepedia page, if he plays a Challengers Cup, you'll see that you know, the tournaments he played, all the legendary tournaments that he won, and all his results in the CDL level, you'll see like the final tournament he played officially as a competitive player was some Challengers Cup where he got top 32 with methods and bows. You're thinking, well, okay, you know, does that tarnish the legacy? I don't think it makes any difference personally, but I can understand why Scump feels the way he does.
Like yesterday, Zin's like, let's play the Challengers Cup, of course, chat. Yes! Play the Challengers Cup. And then... And why don't you tell them about that today? You talked a big game, but then you chickened out at the end. What's up?
Yeah, there's one reason I'm not playing it.
Why is that?
It's the person talking to me right now.
Why is that?
Guilt tripped me and made me feel bad if I was going to play it.
No, I did not.
You said, dude. Let's end this conversation.
You're weird.
Nope. Because I wanted to play badly.
No, you didn't.
To be fair,
you would be playing right now if you did.
Well, to be fair, Bose didn't reply to me till like 6:30 in the morning. So Bose replied last night. It was probably me, Bose, rated in the fourth, like Scumming or somebody.
Yeah, exactly. If you really wanted to play it, you would be playing right
I will
this
defend
moment.
you. I will defend you in the sense that it's different for you than most of us.
Why is that?
Because if you were to not play well in Challengers, they'd be on your ass.
Correct.
And I hate to admit it, but you have a little bit of a legacy in this game.
Just a little one.
Like, I think you would have played well, but they also would have been on your ass.
We wouldn't have gotten spit on, but...
I think we would have qualified definitely for the top 8 tomorrow.
The other side of this OpTic story then is about iLLeY. So the OpTic sub for some time after Scump retired was Scump himself, but nowadays it seems iLLeY is their sub. I'm guessing he's now back in the US, right? Or maybe back in Canada, because, you know, he was away in India for some time, right? After he took a break after getting dropped. That was what it seemed like, or being benched technically, because he's still on OpTic and still signed to OpTic, despite the fact that anything OpTic related has been removed from his bio, from his name. Like, you wouldn't know that he was on OpTic looking at anything. Okay, technically his header is still OpTic OpTic branded, but you know, he's taken all the OpTic stuff out of his branding, so he clearly wants to come for revenge at some point in the future. He said that initially when he was dropped in the off season. Now they dropped him again, so like iLLeY is still part of OpTic technically, but I don't imagine that he's really too eager to be part of OpTic for too much longer when he can get a spot on another team. I know that people are saying, oh, you know, like people were roasting him in the Reddit thread and saying, oh, you know, the Chinese COD League must be starting up soon then for iLLeY if he's starting the streams again. But I certainly think iLLeY's still a Pro League caliber player and will get back at a good spot next season. It won't be on OpTic, I imagine, and you know, he's gonna get bought out potentially somewhere else, or maybe they let him go or something. But right now OpTic still need a sub, I guess, signed to their team, and Scump doesn't really want to be that guy, nor I imagine his methods, so I guess it makes sense to keep iLLeY around unless someone wants to buy him out, which teams right now probably don't. We saw that as soon as Standy was released as a free agent by Ultra, then immediately Vegas snapped him up, right, because there was no buyout in play, and other teams would probably do the same for iLLeY if he was to be free. So as he says, S&D Chal streams might have to resume back up, and I will say it's interesting how, you know, iLLeY in his career, ever since he joined OpTic, never did that much streaming. I mean, this guy used to stream all the time back in the day. Used to be so much fun watching his PvP back in even like Infinite Warfare and games like that before he even made it as a professional player. Used to love watching his streams back then, but over the last few years has streamed less and less at times, and especially being on OpTic Gaming, right, maybe didn't take advantage of that opportunity for streaming as he could have done. We know what Shotzzy is doing at the present day. Like, this guy's absolutely killing it in the content game, not just as a player, but also on all the different social platforms. His YouTube's been popping off, his stream's been popping off, like, for good reason, and it's very clear to me that Shotzzy is the, you know, the next Scump in a way, right? Okay, he's not going to be Scump, he's never going to be able to achieve what Scump did because of what Call of Duty was back when Scump was doing it, and Scump is still the #1 Call of Duty streamer when he goes live. But Shotzzy right now is basically #2, and that's very impressive from Shotzzy, but he's taken advantage of the opportunities. iLLeY, okay, different personality, but never really did so in the same way, and now he's saying, oh, you know, look, it's time to get the streams back up, which is good, right? People are going to be excited to see iLLeY play, but, you know, still, I think this should have been a bit of a no-brainer. As soon as Dashy was dropped, straight away he was on the stream, getting ready to go, and proving that he deserved a spot back in the league with some of his performances in 8 and the like on stream over the next couple of days. And what do you know, he was picked up very shortly afterwards, again, by OpTic, of course, and would have been nabbed by another team as well if he hadn't have been signed back to OpTic. So does this mean that iLLeY is like kind of, well, on the verge of getting ready to go again and try and get back into the league? It might be a bit late now, the reality, to actually get signed, because he's still going to be on OpTic throughout the Major 4 cycle. After Major 4, teams might make kind of last gasp changes going into the World Championship. That's not out of the realms of possibility, but still, there'd have to be a buyout involved. And is iLLeY a solution for any of those teams around the league? Maybe not. I think it's more likely he has to wait till next season, to be honest, but we'll see how it goes. We've got to talk also, though, about the flank tier list from last night. So a very, a chaotic episode at times, and there's a lot of controversy about the way this tier list was done, especially from the likes of JCap, and I think for very good reason, because this tier list was kind of done on performances so far this season. I can understand that perspective. They want to rank the teams on how they've done on average so far this year. So London, for example, got a terrible rating here. They got put in the F tier, the worst team in the league, because their placings have been top 16 at Major 1, because there were 16 teams and they came last, even behind a lot of the amateur teams. Top 12 at Major 2, Disaster. Top 12 at Major 3. So they've got 0 points. They average like a placing of 13th out of the 3 tournaments they've played so far. So London on the placings are terrible. But in terms of how good they actually are, I don't think they're the worst team in the league, London. They were close to beating OpTic. They were pretty competitive in Stage 3. And yes, they're not going to make the World Championship. I don't think. They just have too few points effectively. But their team with iLLeY is, I think, going to be somewhat competitive. I definitely wouldn't have them as the worst team in the league right now, but they're basing this on the entire season, so they did. And you can understand that, but it's like, if you want to look at the rankings over the course of the season, just look at the standings, right? The standings will tell you everything you need to know on that. You don't need to tier list the teams over the year, because the point standings effectively do that job for you. It's more interesting, in my opinion, to know what's the list right now. If there was a tournament tomorrow, who wins? Who's second? Like, who beats who? That's kind of what I think about when I think about power rankings, but still, they did this kind of tier list, which I understand, but it's not perfect in my opinion. They were roasting Rokkr for good reason, right? The team is fraudulent. They've got frauds top to bottom, he says. Basically saying that they just gave up on the season by sticking with this roster. It is going to be kind of, you know, it's do or die now for Rokkr, right? For potentially the players, but also for the coaching staff, right? Because Brett Diamond made it clear they trust their coaching staff to turn this around, and they're putting effectively all the burden on the coaching staff and saying, look, Looney and Brian Saint, you sort this problem now, or you're going to go. I don't know if that's actually what they're saying, but it seems to me that this is their chance, right? And Brian Saint and Looney have said, you know what, we're going to stick with this team, and this is how it's going to go. And I'm guessing they're going to give that coaching team until the end of the season to try and turn this ship around. But if they can't, like, it might be short for those guys as well, and it might be, you know, clean house type situation here at Rokkr, which is not what they wanted to do after the investment they put into this team. But they got a top 3 at Major 2. The team has the potential, but right now I don't see it. Mind-blowing situation actually, as they agreed between Ben JoeDeceives and aBeZy on Florida being kind of a C tier level team, and they'd already put FaZe up in the S tier, which is always a little bit controversial. Yes, they've placed incredibly well, first a couple of third places, and okay, over the course of the season they've been the best average placing team for sure. But in terms of a dominant force, it's difficult to say. I think that Haggy did make a good point though, the fact that FaZe and Ultra, their record on LAN between the two teams respectively is something like 10-4 for FaZe and 9-4 for Ultra. So like that's way ahead of everyone else in the league. So if you look at that perspective from LAN, you can see why those two teams are similarly placed above the rest of the competition. This is what they eventually came up with though. So FaZe and Ultra in the S tier, OpTic in the A tier on their own. There was some talk from Paddy wanted them in the B tier. So whatever, a lot of the time it comes down if these lists are good or not, or interesting or not, is down to the criteria. And as I say, this was based on their performances over the course of the season. And of course there is some, you know, it should be recency bonus, right? If you've won the most recent event and placed top 12 at the first one, then you should get some bonus for that recent performance. So Thieves were in the B tier with Subliners here, still here. Yes, they won an event. To me, they're further down on this list at the moment in terms of recent performances. Surge, I feel, will get kind of hard done by here, getting put in the C tier, but, you know, I'd maybe even swap them and the Subliners around in present form, but of course they're considering the entire season, so, you know, it is what it is. And then Ravens here right at the bottom of the F tier. To me, Guerrillas are the worst, hands down, but, you know, still, based on placings, I guess you gotta say Ravens are the worst team in the league right now. But JCap kind of shares my opinion on this and says, look, a tier list based on season performance that has already happened is just called the standings and defeats the purpose of a tier list. Incorrect as aches. It allows us to factor in a bias to recency and fall off. People who played well early and not recently are still high in the standings, but would not be high in this tier list. If we did a tier list based on recent 3 or recent major 3, it would be just the rankings from the event. When an underdog wins a match or a game in any competition, does it automatically make them the favorite if the matchup were to be replayed again? Which is also a fair point because, you know, no, right? If you look at an underdog winning a game that they might win 20% of the time, they'll still lose it 80% of the time if they were to play again the next day. So to me, it would have been more interesting to see what their opinion is on the current list, right? What they would have thought right now going into Major 4, who are the best teams, because I agree that, as Ake says, there is a slight difference in the standings and what they came up with, because you can factor in a little bit more recency bias into play based on Major 3 results, whereas the standings kind of treat every single major equally, whereas, you know, the recent majors probably deserve more respect than the first major of the season. But still, I don't think that list is particularly representative of what I expect to see here going into Major 4, but it's still not going to be too far away. Just a couple of things to close out the video here with. I thought this was kind of funny actually discussing it, you know, players from Virginia. There's always the talk about players from New Jersey, right, the likes of Scrappy and others, and apparently that has a particularly good culture for competitive COD players. And there was talk about, is there anyone actually, does anyone from Virginia, does anyone living in Virginia? I'm sure some of you guys are from there as well. And Clace is from Virginia, even, you know, Octane's from Virginia, and apparently Morks is from Virginia as well, born, and also Brax is born and lived in Virginia for a couple of years. So we got LOARs as Octane, so, you know, that's the Virginia team. If there was going to be like a state or country, not like a World Cup, right, but you could do a state team potentially. It might be a bit of a challenge, but you might be able to do like a team from different parts of the country maybe that could work. It would be pretty interesting to see. But yeah, the Virginia team would be Octane, Clay, Brack, and Morks, which is, you know, definitely pretty AR heavy. Sub-team would need to come different if that team was going to make any success on, you know, what definitely should be an actual proper, well, CDL tournament rather than Warzone, which, you know, thankfully, some would say thankfully has died a death, and others would say it's bad for COD, but I never played Warzone anyway, so I really don't have too much of an opinion. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
I'm gonna talk about this, but Gersh, you checked me out,
No.
bro. No, what a bro, Gersh, you checked me out. He's just like in the back parking lot screaming, bro. We're
That's crazy, bro.
Your pregame speech?
Yeah, screaming, bro, right? Like,
Wait.
formal bows and APG are right there, right? And he's screaming, "This up all the green ball. You guys got." I'm like, yo, what
Damn.
What the
Damn,
fuck?
son.
the? Yeah, because they just be FaZe, so he was tweaking about that.